So good evening, everybody. Welcome to HHR committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. The first thing to do is get an approval of the minutes from the meeting of November the 2nd. And Sarah, you said, I'm sorry?
Yep, we have a couple. Yeah, we just have a couple of minor edits. I just wanted to make a motion to make a quick adjustment. In the document that has ours, we need to make sure that Dave Cravanzola's company name is consistently represented as ONG/APC, and we will
Right.
make that update. Dave, I saw your comments for David Martin's spreadsheet, and I will make sure that those are updated. And I know there's a change from Jeremy Ginsburg for planning and zoning. We have down November 22nd as the next meeting, and it is actually November 29th. So we do need to make those two changes.
So then can we, on the assumption that we make those changes to the minutes, can we get a motion to accept the minutes as so amended? Jameson moves, Sarah seconds, all in favor, aye. Great, unanimous. Next thing, just we have public comment. I saw Mr. Vesey is here. Would you like to say anything at this point, or are you here to listen and observe tonight?
Listen and observe. You got too much to cover. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Seeing no other members of the public, we'll keep rolling. Brief chairs report. We've had a fair amount take place since we last met. Most importantly, we had our request for additional appropriations for the work on 32 Hoyt and for the roof work, approved first by the Board of Finance and then by the full RTM on Monday night. So that was great. Those resolutions have been adopted. There's now a 10-day waiting period before those resolutions are effective, at which point Dave and Travis can submit those to the state as part of our OSCGNR submission. So that's great news. And then last evening we had the first of two P&Z public hearings. Last evening was a presentation by KG&D and Ty and Bond on Hinley and Royal. Both of those, and then the presentation on Holmes will be on the 29th. Both of those presentations went very, very well. The presentation on Hinley, there was a fair amount of public comment, primarily from neighbors on Pasture Lane. I mean, anybody who wants to watch the meetings, I think they're recorded. I don't know if those recordings have been posted or not yet. They were on TV 79. But net, they were questioning some of the design options with regard to stormwater management. So Joe Canis is going to go back and look at that and see if there's some refinements that can be made with regard to, and primarily the detention, the placement of the detention pond, the nature of the detention pond, whether it is an open pond or a covered facility, and then where that drains to ultimately. So more to come on that, but otherwise the meeting was positive. P&Z was supportive of what we're doing on those two schools. The next thing I wanted to do was item 4, and it's kind of a good segue from the chair's report, and that is, as I've consistently been saying, Jill has been carrying a tremendous load on this committee, and honestly, it just doesn't seem appropriate that she be the vice chair of the committee, because vice seems to somehow imply a subordinate role, and there's no way that in any manner of viewing it that what Jill is doing is the least bit subordinate. She's carrying a tremendous load and has been out front and has been unbelievably helpful, in particular educating me on the town processes, but then helping out with the Board of Education, with the Board of Finance, with the First Selectman's office. And I asked the First Selectman if there would be any objection to changing her title to co-chair, because I thought that that would be more appropriate than vice chair. So I wanted to raise that for the committee and see if I could get a motion to, I guess, elect Jill. I guess we fire her as vice chair and elect her as co-chair. So if I could get a motion to do that. Motion from Dave. Can I get a second from Jameson? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I guess Jill has to abstain from voting. She has to recuse herself.
I can
But
vote.
thankfully we have Dave Crowar
I don't think
here.
she does. She
No,
can
I
vote
can
for
I'll
herself.
vote for myself. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great.
And I
Because
thank you very much.
I didn't want it to be anything other than unanimous. I didn't want to report that it wasn't unanimous.
Thank you.
So I'm very.
It's a pleasure to work with all of you.
As long as you
sorry
don't
to
decline
have
that
to accept-
option, Jill.
Yeah, no.
I'm sorry to have to accept Jill's resignation as vice chairman, but happy to announce that she's been elected the co-chair. Moving right along. Thank you, Dave Martin. He put together and was circulated as part of the agenda a plan for creating a payment approval process for the committee. It is patterned after what was done at the Ox Ridge Committee. Really, to this point, we've been able to deal with invoices as they come in because they're coming in kind of ones and twos. I think what's going to start happening is, especially as we start getting closer to the construction part of things, invoices are going to start coming in more rapidly. And then we're going to have to start making decisions on things like possible change orders, for example. And so Dave crafted up a procedures memo and out of a decision matrix in the form of an Excel that, like I said, is patterned after what was done at Ox Ridge. And it contemplates the formation of a construction subcommittee. And then as items come up, we expect that most of those are going to be introduced by KG&D and or ONGAP, and then they would be discussed on a prompt basis on a subcommittee call or video, and then approved. We would have a number of the appropriate ex officio members of the committee, of the building committee, be part of the subcommittee, and then we would also have built-in proposed signature authority. So the idea is that it would require signatures depending on the amount at issue. It would require signatures from members of the building committee, and then at least one of myself, Dave Martin, or Jill. And then those items would go to Jen Charneski for to be put into the payment processing queue at the town. I can turn it over to Dave if you want to go through it in more detail, or if people want to discuss and go through it in more detail. I don't know if folks have had a chance to review that, what Dave had prepared, and if they had any questions or wanted to discuss any aspect of it.
Sorry, go ahead, Dave. Dave, we can't hear you for some reason.
Nope.
Any better?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's what happens when your hobby gets in the way of your business meeting. Yeah, so no, the only other thing I was going to mention is that the way that the payments are structured, as Chris mentioned, there is a tier by dollar amounts, and then one of the other factors is there's also an evaluation of if the item materially impacts the function or design of the project, because those facets would also escalate it to a higher level of required approval up until the third tier, which would require a meeting of the building committee, that's all of us, and a positive vote of the majority. Absent that, there's this procedure is pretty much identical to what's being done at Oxbridge currently. So hopefully it will make a smooth transition, at least for Dave Cravenzola and ONGAP, and certainly for Jen Charneski and Rich Rudel over at the administration side. It's just going to be a matter of, those of us that have been nominated for the oversight committee to review the invoices when they come in and/or change orders, and make sure we go through our process on a timely basis so that we can meet the deadlines required to get the payments out to the respective vendors and not hold anything up.
Right, because I think working backwards, my understanding is the town pays things on a 30-day cycle. So at the front end, we're going to have to be fairly responsive and prompt on these things to get them into the payment queue. Jill, you had some comments?
Nope, Dave mentioned it. I was looking for the decision tree.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any input or thoughts or comments on the procedure that Dave proposed?
Thank you for your work, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. If not, could I get a motion to approve the formation of a construction oversight subcommittee and the attached payment approval review and approval process that's attached to the agenda for this evening's meeting? Moved by Dave, seconded by Jameson. All in favor? Aye. Dave, you want to vote on this or not? Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
It approves. All right, unanimous. Awesome. Next, let's take up something that we deferred from the last meeting, and that is a discussion on what we think the preferred stormwater management system design approach at Holmes is. Joe Canis is supposed to be joining us. He was on another call, and so he may be jumping in a little bit. We can get further input from him. But the two primary options that we've been considering, really, and where we had a decision point, was whether or not we preferred an open detention pond that would be just to the north of the service road at the home school, or and that would be fenced and would be maintained by Kevin and his team. The alternative is a covered detention pond that would be fabricated, and it would be buried under the new asphalt. That would be to the west of the music wing, and that would then not be an open pond. I guess in summation, the pros and cons were the covered facility, a little bit more expensive, a little bit more difficult to maintain, because if anything really went wrong with it, you would need to dig it up, although there would be access provided by way of manholes and things of that nature. You could drive over it. You couldn't actually build over it. The obvious pro to it is that it is covered. You don't have open water. It doesn't, it's means that the space between the service road and the property line is just landscaped green space. Can be just attractive green space without drainage or water in it. The obvious pros for the open pond are ease of maintenance. So, people have given their thoughts over the course of various conversations, but I think it would be great if we could come to a decision at this meeting so that the design team can take the selected design and run with it. I'll go first, I guess, and partly from hearing some of the comment last night in P&Z as it related to the Hindley School. My preference would be the closed system. I just think it's going to be a nicer design. It's going to be, while, at other schools we have open detention ponds, this one would be really pretty close to the school. And I just worry about the, attractive nuisance nature of having standing water that, in best case takes 48 to 72 hours to drain down. So my preference would be the closed system.
Chris, can you summarize a little bit what you heard from planning and zoning, just that leads you there? There was a lot of I think there were neighbors talking about things. There were some questions from P&Z. What was the flavor of those two things?
Yeah, it was primarily the neighbors to the south of the school, who right now there's no detention facility. There's just and right on time, Joe Canis arrives. We're just talking about I gave a brief lead in, Joe, about homes and the two choices that we had for the drainage facility, and was saying that to some extent my views on my preferred approach to homes are somewhat colored by the commentary we got last night at P&Z, and that at Hindley there's no detention facility now. There's just a drainage pipe that taps into a pipe on Pasture Lane. There's a drainage easement there that then ends up leading to a pipe to Nearwater. And so no matter what we put in, it's going to be a big improvement over what's there now.
Right.
But there was concern that whatever we put in, one, was going to be able to handle the capacity in a heavy rain from the parking lots and the roofs and the impermeable surface at the school, because these neighbors get pretty badly flooded out. So question one was, whatever we're doing, is it going to be able to handle the flow? Two, are there alternatives? Because in their mind, anything that drains to Pasture Lane is bad and risky, and they don't like it. And are there alternatives that could allow it to drain in a different direction, ideally to Nearwater? And then thirdly was just the comment about having an open detention pond that, in the case of Hindley, literally is on the property line, right? And so it is directly abutting the backyards of a number of the neighbors who, didn't think that was ideal. That was really the flavor of the comments last evening. And I just, I took that. I was like, yeah, these people to look out their back windows and there's an open pond. P&Z didn't really take a position on it. They heard the neighbors, and Joe was very responsive and said, these are good points. We'll think about them. We'll see if there's alternative solutions that that can accomplish this. And P&Z was like, great, let us know what you come up with.
Right. And to that effect, I did have a follow-up conversation with Jeremy Ginsburg today. We talked about it, and I think probably the best solution would be to see if there's some opportunity to direct more runoff towards Nearwater. Obviously, we'll have to evaluate the capacity of the system there, but we do have town records, we have mapping. We just might need to make some assumptions about how deep the pipes are, but we can send somebody out to measure them. So what I was thinking, because it all ends up in the same place anyway, those two drainage systems, the one in Nearwater and the one in Pasture Lane, they do end up converging a little bit downstream of the site. So if we can direct more water towards Nearwater, less towards Pasture Lane, I think that's certainly an improvement. But but to your initial statement, no matter what we're doing, there is an improvement, right? That we've designed that system for a 100-year storm. So, like September 1st last year, that was a 250-year storm, right? It might help, but they're still going to get flooded if there's a large enough storm.
Hey, Joe,
There's always gonna-
Dave Martin, when you say for a 100-year storm, is that a 100-year storm for the entirety of the physical infrastructure, or just for the new portions that we're adding?
Well, that's a good point. Right? It's for what we're adding, right? But what we're adding is basically at the bottom of all the infrastructure, right? So that detention pond is, more or less the last stop before it leaves the site. So it's designed for the 100-year storm across the area contributing to that very last point. But that's not to say, for example, like the north parking lot, there's a drywall system in there. At some point that will get surcharged, right? And the water will start to pond in the parking lot before it even gets down to Pasture Lane.
So go ahead, Jameson.
So first off, I think you guys are talking about Henley, but we're talking about making a decision on Holmes, correct?
Yeah, no. I think Joe is just adding some color to the discussion on Henley because, obviously drainage as a category is a big one that we're having to deal with, and it covers a couple of the schools.
Okay, yeah. So
And Joe,
Holmes, I was there a couple of times and saw what the cover looks like where we're talking about putting the uncovered detention center of the pond.
Right.
From my visual at least, it's pretty dense in there, even as leaves are coming off the trees. So there's not a whole lot of visibility into there. The two things that I'm weighing are one, the open pond. I don't know when it starts getting warmer or springtime shows up, if there's stagnant water, mosquitoes start building up in there was one of my concerns. And that being right next to the playground area, especially for the younger kids, or for all the kids, actually, the older kids are on that side, is not good planning in my mind. That was the first thing that came to my mind with an outdoor detention center like that. The negative on the closed one, which like at our business, we have huge detention basins in our parking lot. And when we redid this building, the city of Stanford made us put in giant basins. When we've had all these 250-year floods, I get zero flooding whatsoever on any of my properties. I'm basically the only property on this street in Stanford that doesn't get it. And we used to get pretty bad flooding. So they are very effective. And I think obviously they're all underground, so you don't see them too much. We have a lot of garbage that flies by here, and we really don't have to do a whole lot of maintenance for these underground detention centers. And when we do, it's fairly simple. So my vote is for the covered underground detention center. Keeps the mosquito stuff away. I know there's an added cost to it, but from a practical standpoint, I think it's the best decision we can make.
Right. Just to address the mosquito question, these are designed to draw down in 72 hours, right? To minimize the breeding issue, but that's not to say that over time you can get some sediment buildup in the bottom of there. That you're going to lose some of that. It's going to take longer to drain down. So from that perspective, yeah, an underground system would be better from a mosquito control perspective. Absolutely.
And Kevin, just while we're on that topic, there are specific rules about how we handle pests like mosquitoes, right? Spraying and things like that. There are specific rules about what can be done on school property.
Right, and it's actually very minimal. We're not allowed to spray pesticides, insecticides, things like that under Connecticut statute.
Mm-hmm. Joe, did Jeremy or I don't know if you were able to talk to Craig Flaherty, did you get any flavor from the town in terms of any reason why they might have a lean one way or the other, or is as far as you can tell, our town employees fairly neutral on this? Yeah,
they're fairly neutral. Jeremy's response to me was whatever you and the peer reviewer agree to, the commission will be okay with. Okay. Is pretty much what he said. So I, for just switching gears for Holmes, I did reach out to the peer reviewer on that one. It's not Craig Flaherty, it's Todd Ritchie with SLR. I did reach out to him, and he said that he didn't see any problems with the underground detention system at that location. One of the things he suggested, and I agreed with him, is just make sure that it's out of the, I know we're using that service drive for construction activity, but we want to protect it somewhat from being driven over all the time because that tends to compact the soil beneath it. So we might need to shift that a little bit to the west. Get it, maybe halfway out of the pavement and halfway out of the playing field.
Shift the tank a little bit to the west.
Yeah, shift the underground chambers to the west on homes.
Does that have any design impact, Travis?
No, we would just be restoring the field instead of the asphalt
Right.
area.
Yeah, it moves it away from the building.
Yeah, the concern is with the heavy equipment for construction that compacts that soil and then it doesn't percolate through the soil as it needs to.
But wouldn't this be put in, I don't know, from a phasing standpoint, would this system be put in early in the process so there's a lot of construction vehicles driving over it, or later in the process before you pave that area?
That's a good question. I guess we got to figure out for that new addition, right? Is that new addition going to rely upon that system being in place to manage the stormwater coming off that addition, right?
Right. I would say on that campus, right, we're increasing impervious cover overall. And so as that addition goes up, we're going to need to manage that stormwater. So that means that we'll need some sort of facility. That's not to say we can't dig a basin somewhere, right?
Have like a stopgap system, yeah, temporary.
Right.
And that's what we actually had to do that at Oxbridge anyways. Joe, I apologize if this is in the plans already or not, but right, what we did at Oxbridge was we ended up putting a temporary surface basin in to help manage stormwater during construction because we're just now, a year and a half later, putting the permanent system in.
Right. Right.
Yep.
But yeah, we definitely want to locate that, so it's not impinging on the construction operations also. Right. That's going to be key to understanding what the logistics are, because that'll dictate where we locate that temporary basin.
Jill, Sarah, Dave, any thoughts from you guys and Kevin, obviously, who's going to own this thing?
Chris?
Yes.
Not an engineer by any means, and Kevin and I have had different discussions, and he may even say something different even tonight. But I'm kind of if money wasn't a topic here, I'm sort of leaning towards some of the attributes that you talked about, and also Jemison a little bit. We have some of those ponds around the district a little bit, but they're not in that proximity. I don't believe that they're really in that proximity. I don't know. I'd prefer not to have that set up there as close to the building as it is. That fence is what, 4 feet something, or weekends and so on and so forth. You got people potentially going over that fence. For me, the safety thing, I would just, if money was no object and stuff, I would just defer and do the underground system. The one question I have on an underground system, Joe, is over time these schools get used for different things. Community events, different summer events, so on and so forth. And it wouldn't be, maybe not right out the door, but maybe down the line a wee bit, that they put a tent in there and they put it into the tarmac. They fix it in the tarmac. Can you do that or not? I'm not suggesting we would want to do that or would permit it.
Right. But in the event that something does go down, well, the systems typically have to be a minimum of 2 feet below grade. So the top of the system is 2 feet from the top of the pavement. So I don't know how, I can't imagine your stake being that deep for a tent.
Okay. All right.
Right.
And they're the domed structures, right, Joe? They're arch top.
Yeah, there's 2 different versions. There's the arch top, right, which are made of plastic, and which I think is what we specified. There's also a concrete version too. That's rectangular. It's more expensive, but you get more storage out of it in a smaller footprint.
Dave Cramazola, this is Dave Martin. Do I recall correctly that we only have like rough estimates for price on these things, right? But my recollection for price was somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 more for the enclosed systems, depending on where the estimate falls out.
Yeah, I think so, and I'm gonna hate to do this, but I'm gonna rely a little bit on Travis because I think I was driving when we were crunching some of those numbers last week, right? It was, and I know it ended up the amount more that I said was really not accounting for the net with the fencing and all of those other things that would be needed with a surface pond.
Right.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
I
The
mean, I
fifth,
would say that where we are with, again, the homes. You know, well, we added funds, you know, with the appropriation to the homes project. I mean, that was the only project that had started off being over the budget that was set. Um, but I would say that if I wouldn't let the money is not enough to let that really be the decision at this point in the project. That's my opinion, is that if really what you feel is the best for you for a product is to have the underground, it's a little more, you know, we'll work with KG&D and we'll accommodate that within the budget. It's not some major deal breaker cost that would force you to jeopardize something else that you need out there.
yeah.
And so
Agree with what David said.
when you say it didn't include the net, it basically the number was just the pure cost, but not the cost for the retention pond per se. The above ground did not include the extra fencing and those types of things, so it wasn't really an apples to apples.
Right. I mean, given the time that we thought we had to do it, I really just asked the estimator to say, listen, just you know, one for one, a surface pond versus detention, and I didn't have him in context take off those two plans to account for everything in there. So the net accounts for the other things that are needed when having a surface pond, which closes the gap between the surface pond and the underground detention.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
What is the lifetime of the underground tanks? Kind of like when you start, you go from a dirt field to a turf field, then you're committed to a lifetime of maintenance. Is that a comparable example? And how long do these tanks last?
Yeah, they could last, at least, 50 years, right? Depending on, and it depends on, it could be more or less depending on how they're treated. Like, for example, if you're, put a big heavy crane on it, you're probably going to compromise the lifetime of it. But, if you keep heavy traffic off it, they are rated for truck traffic, but to the extent that you can minimize the amount of traffic over it, once or twice a week garbage pickup is fine. But yeah, they have a long lifespan, similar to, catch basins that you see in the street. You just might need to replace the cover every now and then. They might get nicked up or something like that, or hit by plows.
These are plastic, correct?
Yeah, the chambers themselves will be plastic underneath, but we usually have our risers that come up to grade with like a manhole cover on top. That way you can access it, if you need to vacuum it out or something, you can get to it. So it looks like
Is there a reason it's not cement?
are you talking the chamber itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, you get a longer lifespan, because it is concrete versus the plastic.
I do say though that the concrete ones definitely come with a considerable increase in cost than the plastic ones do.
Right.
Yeah, just meant lifetime and less. Again, to the conversation of cost being a no concern type thing. If the longevity of it is concrete is much better and less likely to be damaged with things going over it or whatever, then didn't know if that was part of the equation or not.
Yeah, no, I understand your point there. I think if there was a concern of what these parts of the building or what the area outside the building would be used for, if it was out, say, in the front of the school or in some, very high traffic area that was susceptible to being possibly overloaded, but where this is, it's generally going to be passive activity
Right.
above and around it. And as Joe mentioned, deliveries and, rubber tired vehicles, whatever the weight are, is really, they're all designed to accommodate that. So my opinion is to go to something like a concrete would probably, you wouldn't necessarily be getting your money's worth out of that added cost.
Got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, I agree with that.
All right, Chris, are we ready to vote then?
Dave, Jill, Sarah.
Kevin, you got any comments?
No, I think everybody touched on them, and I mentioned at the last meeting, no preference from my standpoint, but we're going to take care of whatever you guys vote to give us.
I just wanted to say that I think that there are some other costs that maybe are not in the design for an open plan. I think that we don't necessarily have looked at. Is fencing involved in that? I don't know if the costs include fencing, but we talked about the fact that there might be sediment that comes in. Is there a possible need to dredge or to do maintenance on the open system rather than the closed? I'm not sure that all the costs were in that design. Does anybody have any answers on that?
Yeah. For the detention pond, yeah, there's the cost of fencing, which you won't need with the underground system.
Right. Right.
Right.
Also mowing it and things like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Then there's the cost of the plantings and the mowing, which obviously you're not going to need to do for an underground system either.
But that's going forward. That wouldn't be in our budget in any case, right? Our budget only covers the construction, the installation, and the materials.
That's correct, but dredging it or they're having to do other big things might be a problem. So I just wanted to bring those up.
Yep.
So I don't think we have to vote, right? We just want to give direction.
Yeah. But we should have a consensus, right? And I think the only way to tell if we have a consensus is, why don't I see how many people are in favor of the covered versus the open, and that'll be our consensus. Is that a fair way to proceed? So just by a show of hands, can I see how many members of the committee are in favor of the closed system?
Oh.
Okay, well, that's pretty much everybody. So, and I guess just then why don't we proceed with the closed system, Joe? And I guess we should think about whether that's the right solution for Hindley as well.
And Joe, when we were talking about Hindley originally, you said you're going to evaluate the capacity of the system. Is that right?
Well, we did evaluate the capacity, right? As part of our computations, right? We take a look at are the pipe size big enough? Pipes, they're actually sized for a 25-year storm, not for the 100. But the actual what controls the peak flow and volume leaving the site is designed for the 100. But we need to take a look at, we'll do in the coming weeks, is take a look at what the capacity of the storm drains and near water is, right? Because what we don't want to do is, divert half of Hindley over to near water and then suddenly, move a flooding problem somewhere else.
Sure.
I'm sorry, go ahead, David.
No, I was just going to ask is, as you evaluate that, since we know that there's a sensitivity amongst the neighbors to flooding in that area, I know we said we designed to 100 years for the new impervious surface that we're adding. Maybe since we already have somewhat of a flooding issue on that campus, maybe we could look at having it slightly oversized to that to capture some of the runoff that occurs from the existing campus.
Just to clarify, right? When we designed the pond that we proposed with our submission, that was sized to take the runoff from all the campus, the new and the old. Right. Yeah. So it's the full 8 acres.
I obviously didn't get that.
I think you were saying that that the impervious surface wasn't increasing at Hindley, that it was going to be about a wash. No pun intended. It was going to be about a wash.
Right, that's correct. But well, yeah, when we designed it for the whole contributing area to it, and not,
Okay.
versus what's new or old. But what the difference in impervious cover tells us is, are you going to be generating more runoff? Like, for example, at homes, right? We need that detention system to address the increase in runoff because we are adding impervious cover to that site. Whereas at Royal, it's a smaller system because it's focused on water quality there, right? Because we reduce the impervious cover by 1/3 of an acre, so we already got the volume and peak flow part of that solved just by removing that sea of asphalt in the front.
Okay. Just to keep on rolling, if we could, Kevin, you have a better sense for the actual work that these guys are doing. I read the proposals, but the next item was to discuss and approve the contract with Barrett Roofing Contractors, who are going to provide roof test cuts at the 3 schools. And I believe we have the contracts were circulated with the agenda. And it was 75. Did I get that right? $7,500 per school. But maybe you can describe, Kevin,
Sure.
more precisely what it is that they're doing and why we think we need to have them do this.
Sure. So KG&D has hired Watsky Associates to be the roofing consultant, and the Watsky field technician, whatever his title is, he's requesting a not to exceed number for 2 roofers, one to make the cuts, one to repair the cuts for 3 days, depending on how many cuts and borings they need to do to get a good understanding of what they're going to face with these roofs. So it is pretty extensive, but Watsky is very detail oriented, and they always have a very good end product. They were our consultant for the last 2 roofs that we did at Holmes and Hinley, and those went off without a hitch. So while it may seem to be
did Barrett do the roof cuts in connection with those jobs?
I don't know who Mike used to do the cuts, but Barrett did win the bid for the Hinley school, so they did the full roof replacement.
Oh, okay.
But we have retained them for a number of minor repairs over the past 2 years, and they've done a great job. So we just
So in
went to
your
them.
view, this is a necessary part of the roofing project?
Absolutely, this is money well spent that will save you from finding out something that you don't know down the road, and
And
possible changes.
the fees strike you as consistent with what other contractors would charge?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. It's I think it's, once again, it's a not to exceed, and it should come in under those amounts.
Okay.
Just to jump in there, I think if I'm reading that correctly, it's the 8649 for the 3 schools. I think that's the total.
Yeah, you're
for
right.
all
I
3
got that. I
schools.
was thinking
Yeah.
of something else. I was having contract merge in my
I'm sorry,
brain.
8649.
8649.
Thank
And
you.
to give a little more background on that, the test cuts, it just allows Watsky to confirm what the existing conditions are so they can see the layer of that existing roof. And we can also utilize these test cuts to perform the hazardous material testing that Hygienics will be performing. So we can combine that because they're going to also need to take samples of the roof, test it for asbestos, and that work also needs to get patched and repaired. So we can have Barrett out there at once doing this.
Okay. So then can I get a motion? Any questions, comments from the committee members?
No, just tell me how you'd like to word it so I can make sure I have it written correctly.
Sure. So can we get a motion to approve retaining, sorry, let me open up here. Retaining Barrett Roofing Contractors to provide roof test cuts at the 3 elementary schools? For Travis, can you read that number again in the amount of?
$8,649.
Thank you.
Hang on, let me get my screen back up. So can I get a motion for that? Jill moves, Jameson seconds, all in favor? Aye,
Aye.
unanimous. Terrific. Kevin, I'm going to put you on deck one more time, which is with regard to the additional hygienics. Hygienics is already a retained contractor doing the environmental studies for us, but we're asking them to do some additional testing that maybe you can describe, and I think that's the one that's $7,500 per school.
Sure. So Hygienics actually approached Travis and I just a few days ago and asked the question if we are taking soil off the properties, we should do additional test pits and soil samples. So we reached out to Joe and he confirmed that yes, we do have to send some of our dirt off site. And in order to do that, we need to know, is it contaminated? Is it not contaminated? Because that once again would generate a change order down the road that we could find out now and save ourselves a lot of headache and time.
Right. Okay.
This isn't
But
not.
I mean, the good news is right now, at least the phase ones were all, the initial studies are good. There's not any reason to believe that any of the soil is contaminated. I'm sorry, Jill, you were saying?
This came up for Oxbridge, this use of the word contaminated. And so maybe just in case anyone from the public is watching this, what we're often talking about is construction debris or something similar that would make the soil. We're not talking about hazardous materials or something that people need to be concerned about from a public health perspective. So just putting that on the table while we're talking about it.
All the soil testing we've done or are doing is not sufficient and doesn't provide the data back for this already?
No, the soil testing we already did was for different purposes, for structural purposes. So the geotech kind of gives you your water table, gives you kind of the quality of soil, and those are limited to cores samples. So it's not the test pit that they're looking at. And the other test pits that were already performed are not necessarily done in the same location that they would need it. So when we had test pits done for Joe, they're done in areas where he needs to confirm percolation rates for these detention systems. So that's done away from the building. So these test pits need to be done where we're doing the excavation work for the additions, so they can make sure that we don't have debris in these soils and they can be carted off without additional costs. Yeah, if we could have done that at the same time if we had known that we needed to test these, and there would have been some savings, but there would have still been additional costs involved for these extra pits.
I was going to say, I think Hygienics, even I know using them in the past, even if they charge by test result, essentially, not just sample taken. So that you would have paid for it anyways, then or now.
Great. So can I get a motion to approve retaining Hygienics to do expanded soil testing at the 3 elementary schools for a charge of $7,500 per school? Sorry, whose hand is up? Jameson moves, Dave seconds, all in favor. Great, unanimous. Terrific. Really, the last item of business is to discuss the planning and zoning fees that are, I guess the way it works, Dave Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, the way that it works is these are estimated fees primarily for peer review work that P&Z retains third parties to review the design civil engineering work done by Travis's team and Joe's team, and those are out-of-pocket charges that have to be paid by the town via the committee. Is that a fair way to describe what these are?
That's the way that I understand it, yes.
Do you have the amounts? I apologize. I'm on my laptop and I'm trying to toggle between screens.
No, it's fine. You sent them out, but I can read them off to you.
That would be
For
great.
stormwater, P&Z was using Redness and Mead for Hindley and Royal, and those amounts were $57.50 for each school. For some reason, for homes, they were using SLR for stormwater. That estimate was $5,500. And then for traffic and parking, they're using Hardesty and Hanover. And the actual number that Jeremy had was a consolidated number. So I asked him to divide it for us so that we would have by school again, as we're trying to track it that way. And he gave us 6,000 for Hindley, under the reckoning that, because there's the extra curb cut and everything like that, that cost would be significantly greater than for Holmes and Royal, and then $3,000 each for Holmes and Royal. So that's the way that dollar amount got divided up. So that those are the dollar amounts that we're talking about. And procedurally, we have to have the town cut checks and deliver them to the P&Z office by the 23rd of November in order for this to be on track.
Okay. Do you mind, assuming we approve those fees, do you mind following up with Jen once the approval's been given to make sure that she has the necessary backup paperwork / invoices from P&Z so she can cut those checks?
Yeah, I will check tomorrow. I don't know if Jen's back from having the flu. She's
been feeling badly. Yes.
Yeah, well, she wasn't at the Board of Finance yesterday, but I can at least get on record with the finance department that we need to have it done, and then I can check with Jeremy. Maybe Jeremy can facilitate it from his side too.
Okay, great. So can I get a motion to approve the fees payable to Planning and Zoning Department as described by Dave Martin and as reflected in the summary that was sent to the committee prior to the meeting? Jill moves. Jameson seconds. All in favor? Great, unanimous. That was really it in terms of business for the committee. Next big event coming up is P&Z on November the 29th for the Holmes School. And as some of you have seen, there was a posting made by the town, and it was also picked up by the Darien Patch to see if we could find some volunteers for the committee, in particular folks with construction and engineering backgrounds. So if you know people, please bring them to our attention and we can interview them and see if they're interested. Because we're having so much fun, why would we not invite more people to the party?
That's right.
Paul's still on the committee, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
He is still on the committee. He couldn't make it this evening. With that, I think we're done for this evening. Can I get a motion
can I
to
just
it? Jill, do you have
mention-
something?
Yeah, just that
please.
our next regularly scheduled meeting is November 30th. So we just want to get ourselves back on a regular schedule, so we're not trying to fire drill. So that's our schedule, November 30th at 6. Please mark your calendars, and we will do our best to stay on track.
And since that is after the Thanksgiving holiday, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I'm sure we will be communicating with each other by phone or by email between now and then. But everybody, please have a wonderful holiday and hope you get to spend some time with family. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn, please? Jameson moves. Dave Kerwar seconds. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a nice evening.